Welcome to Lesson 4 of Microsoft Office Bootcamp by Andersen Corporation. Today's lesson we're going to look at Microsoft Excel. So specifically we will start with understanding spreadsheet software. We'll also take a look at understanding the basic mathematic principles and the orders of operation. And then after that we'll get into a basic spreadsheet. So the first thing that you need to know a little bit about spreadsheet software. Spreadsheet software is a very powerful software that will allow you to analyze data that's presented to you in columns and rows. That data is typically going to include a lot of numbers. It's going to include formulas, which will be common mathematic problems such as x times y, or a divided by b, c plus d, things like that. It's also going to include what are called functions, and functions are going to be a little more advanced than basic formulas. We will not get into formulas and functions in this first lesson. We will begin those in lesson 5, which is going to be a little more advanced. And so the first thing that we're going to know is when you open up Microsoft Excel, your screen will look something like this. You're going to have an opportunity to engage with existing files. So down here at the bottom is where you've had recent files that you've opened. You can also open up one of these files that you've been working on recently. It'll give you a little thumbnail. Then you can also look at some tutorials and some templates. The main option that you will use, however, is opening up a blank new workbook. And so that's what we're going to do. Once we've got Excel open, and again, Excel is going to be the little green spreadsheet icon with the little X indicating what application it is. We're going to select the blank workbook option. So you can double click it. It'll open it right up. And then the first thing we will look at when we open up a new blank workbook is this interface. And so with Excel, the interface is very easy to use, it's very easy to understand, and it's very easy to navigate. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to, my rows and columns are a little bit small. I'm going to come down here to this lower right-hand corner. This is called your zoom slider. So you can see you've got a little minus button so you can zoom out. That will make things smaller. You've got a plus sign to zoom in. That will make things look bigger. The default will be 100%. So you'll see right over here that you've got a viewing at 100%. You can also grab this little black rectangle, click and hold, and then move it to the right to make it larger, bigger zoom. Move it to the left to make it a little bit smaller. So if you've got a very large worksheet, you can zoom out where you can see a lot more. And when we work in lesson number 6, we will be working with a very large data set. And so we will take a look at it using this zooming out view. But right now I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see my columns and rows a little bit more clearly. Now the interface with Excel, as I mentioned, it's very user-friendly, it's very intuitive, it's very easy to use. So the first thing that we'll look at is this top grayish area up here. So you can see my mouse pointer kind of circling this. This is called our ribbon. Now the ribbon is going to be where all of the Microsoft Excel features are housed. And so if we look at the layout of the Microsoft ribbon, you'll see we have things like File, Home, Insert, Draw. You may not have all of the options that I do, but you have the options that we'll be using available to you, so don't worry about it. Now these little words up here are called tabs, T-A-B-S, tabs. Now when we are working in Excel, this is the vocabulary that we'll be using to navigate our ribbon. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear with with the vocabulary. Again, so the tabs are going to be that first layer within our ribbon. So our File tab is going to take us out to our Backstage view. We have a lot of different options on saving, printing, how we want to share, if we want to export or publish. So this is going to be all of our Backstage options. Our next tab is our Home tab. Now our Home tab is going to be basically all of the features that you'll need to know for one of your first lessons. And each tab is divided into what are called groups. Now periodically on the ribbon you will see a vertical line straight up and down, and to the immediate left of that vertical line you'll see a word running along the base of the ribbon. So for example, this first group right here is our clipboard group. And our clipboard group is going to be the most common features like cut, copy, paste, format, things like that. So a lot of times when people come to me and ask, I'd really like to learn how to use Excel, and I'll ask them, what are the things that you'd like to learn? Well, I'd like to learn how to cut and paste. Those are very basic features of Excel. It takes 2 minutes to learn those. The next group we have over here is our font group. The font group is going to be where you will navigate to locate any of the font formatting options. So if you want to change the font, you'll select this little font arrow, and you can choose from myriad different fonts that are built into the application. If you want to change the font size, right over here, right now we're at a Calibri 11. We can make that larger, smaller. We can choose one from this drop-down menu, or we can always click this A with the up arrow or A with the down arrow. This little up arrow is called your Grow Font or Increase Font button, and this will increase it in increments. So you can see if I click it, it'll go up by 1s or 2s. If I click this little decrease font, it'll go down by 2s or 1s, depending on what size you're at. We can also do some bold, italics, or underline formatting, and we can change the text color by choosing the font color arrow and then choosing one of these different options. This little paint can is our fill color, and this will allow us to fill a cell with a different color. Now, a couple more things that you'll notice is that when we hover over an action, for example, right here, I'm going to hover over that little A with the red bar beneath it, and I'm just going to leave my mouse pointer, my selection pointer right there. I'm not going to move it around. When you do that, you're going to get what's called a screen tip. What a screen tip does is it will let you know what that specific feature will do. So you can see it gives it its name, font color, and it will change the color of the text. If I come over to here and leave my pointer, this is bold. It will make your text bold. In addition to giving it its name and what it does, it will also give you a keyboard shortcut, if there's a keyboard shortcut available. And so here you'll notice it says bold, Control+B. So if you hold your Control key down, which is located in the lower left corner of your keyboard, CTRL, if you hold the Control key down and tap the letter B, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to enter my name. I'm going to hover over that B, but instead of clicking the button, I'm going to Control+B, and it will apply a bold formatting. And here you'll see when I did that, it highlighted this bold option, so we know. If I Control-B again, it will deselect it. Control-I will italicize. Control-I again will undo that. So hitting the feature one time will apply it. Hitting it a second time will take it back to its original version. Right, again, so we have our tabs. So Home tab, Insert tab. Insert tab is going to be where you'll have all of the options that you can insert. Things like pictures, smart art, charts, graphs, tables. You can add shapes, you can add text. There's lots of different things that you can insert within a spreadsheet or within a worksheet. So again, our Home tab, our clipboard group, our font group, our alignment group, our number group, and again, so these are all going to be our tabs subdivided into groups, and then within the groups we have features. And so the features are things like bold formatting, italics formatting, changing the decimals of our numbers, things like that. So as long as we understand that common language, our ribbon, within our ribbon, tabs, and then within our tabs, vertical lines indicate our groups. The next thing we have on our ribbon, or immediately above our ribbon, is this little area where it says auto save on or off. We've got a little save icon. You might have a little backwards arrow for undo. This is called our quick access toolbar. And this is going to be where we will house features that we use quite frequently that aren't necessarily in the ribbon. So for example, I have a quick save button right up here. So as I'm working through my worksheet, I can periodically come up here and just click, and it will automatically do a quick save. It's going to save the file as the same name. It will save it in the same location, so you don't have to rename it, move it to a different location, anything like that. This is just going to be a quick save. It's just going to save over the file that you have previously worked on. This next one right here is called undo. So if you make a mistake while you're typing, you can click that undo, and it will undo the last action that you've done. And then so you'll notice there's only a few up here. If you want to customize it, so if you want an option to do a quick print, if you want an option to open a new worksheet or a new workbook very quickly, you can come to this little arrow set right here. It looks like a down pointing pause play button. This is your customize option. Click that arrow and it will open up a menu of common toolbar features, but it will also give you more commands. So if you want to add something different, like, can't even think of, like a wrap text or something, you can do that from here as well. But if we say we want to add a new option, you can see it's going to add a new workbook right up there. We could say we want a option to do our printing. So here's our quick print. It's going to add a little print icon. And we can also say that we want an option that will check the spelling. So I'm going to click that spelling. It gives us that A-B check mark, which indicates that we can just do a quick click and it will check the spelling. As opposed to normally we would have to come to our review tab, go to our proofing group, check our spelling button there. All right, so our quick access toolbar. Immediately below our ribbon, we have a couple different things. Right over here on the far left, we have what's called our name box. So if we hover over that name box and leave our pointer there, you can see it says name box. What the name box will do is it will do two different things. It will provide you the text address. So if we click in a cell, and again, as we mentioned before, worksheets, spreadsheets, worksheets, however you want to label them, they're technically called worksheets. Worksheets are based on a series of columns and rows. Columns will be identified by by letters, and those are going to be vertically up and down across the top of your worksheet. The rows will be indicated by numbers, and they will be represented horizontally, so directly across. Where a column meets a row, for example, column D meets row 7. This is called a cell. So again, our worksheet is based on columns and rows, and where those columns and rows intersect with one another is called a cell. Now, to differentiate cells from one another, we also give those cells a name, which we call the address. So this is the cell address. So where column D intersects with row 7, we call that address D7. So we're always going to indicate the cell name with the letter first, followed by the number. And if we look at our name box will display the cell address. So in this case, D7 will be represented by a D7 up here. If we click in A1 will be represented by an A1. If we click in M15, now the name box changes to that address M15. And if we had any specific cells named, which we'll talk about in lesson 6, we'll also be able to choose the name from this drop-down option. I'm going to come back over to cell A1 because that's typically where we'll begin our work. So that's, again, our name box will indicate what the cell name is or what the cell address is if we haven't applied a name. Immediately next to that, we have our formula bar. Now this is going to be incredibly important. The formula bar serves two purposes. One, it allows us to input text. So we can input text into our cell directly. For example, I'm going to come down to cell A4, and then in cell A4, I'm going to type the number 75. And as you'll notice, while I'm typing it in the cell, it simultaneously populates it into the formula bar. So the formula bar is going to display anything that is directly inputted into a cell. So if, for example, I type the number 75 in cell A4, our formula bar populated with 75. I'm going to make cell B4 my active cell. Now with cell B4 as active, you can see I've got my address over here. This time I'm going to click in my formula bar. So now you can see that I've got my insertion point is blinking in my formula bar option, and I'm going to type the number 25. Now you'll notice as I type the number 25 in my formula bar, simultaneously it populates my cell directly. Right, so those are two different ways that you can input. You can input directly into the cell, which will populate your formula bar, or you can input into the formula bar, which will populate your cell. Now, one of the only times that you'll type something into this cell or formula bar and it's not going to show what you've done. For example, we're going to create a very simple formula. So in cell C4, and again, you can type immediately directly into this or into your formula bar. It makes no difference. So I'm going to create just a simple formula, equals. So anytime you want to add a formula or a function to your worksheet, you're always going to start with equal. Equal indicates to the application that you're going to do something a little more complex than just input. So I'm going to type the equal sign. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide cell A4, 75, by cell B4, which is 25. So instead of typing, I'm going to just click. So I'm going to come over to cell A4, click it one time. You can see it turns the cell shading blue. It adds a blue, we call this marquee. So if you think of an old-time theater, you've got the little lights kind of strobing around the perimeter of that advertisement. That's called a marquee. So I will typically call it a marching ants because it's easier for people to remember, but the formal name is marquee. So we're just going to click in that. It's automatically going to populate A4, and it's going to let us know A4 in blue represents this cell in blue. Then I'm going to hit my division key, click in cell B4, and again, it's going to give us the marquee around this one, and it's going to populate in red. All right, so now I have the formula. Input equals A4 divided by B4. When I hit my enter key, boop, now I get the answer. So 75 divided by 25 is 3, right? So if I click in cell C4, you can see the value of C4 is 3. However, we achieve that value by dividing A4 by B4. And so the formula bar is always going to show us any formulas or functions that we have input into the cell. The cell will not show the formula, it will only show the value. So once we've typed it, we've hit enter, or we've clicked that little green check mark, the formula bar will now display formulas and functions. The cell will only indicate what the value of that cell is. All right, so I'm going to clear this out. So this is just some basic input and simple functions or formulas for Excel. All right, and so as we learn more, we'll go ahead and we'll do step by step as we walk through this. I also want to make sure that you are familiar with some basic mathematical principles. So you'll also see that in our sheet now, we have some operators and some order of operations. And so within Excel, we can do all of the basic operations that we can do in our head or on paper: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, exponents, things like that. Excel sometimes works a little bit differently when you're creating your formulas. So in addition, so when you're using things like 7 plus 5, 12 and 4, your written operator is going to be the plus sign. In Excel, it will also be that plus sign. The plus sign is going to be located in your upper right corner of your keyboard to the immediate left of a backspace button. And then to do that, you'll hold the Shift key and hit the equal sign, and that will give you that plus. Subtraction, just like in written, it's going to be that little minus sign. And again, our minus sign is going to be to the immediate left of the plus and equal sign in the upper left of your keyboard. Multiplication and division are a little bit different. With the multiplication operation, when you write it out, you use an X character, or a character that looks similar to an X, 5 times 2. In Excel, we don't use the X character because X represents a letter, and we can't have that dual purpose. So we have to use something else. So in this case, it's going to be the asterisk key. The asterisk key is achieved by holding Shift and pushing the 8 key atop your keyboard. That will give us that asterisk. If you need to divide, we don't have the division sign in here, but we have the slash. And that little slash is going to be down in the lower left, or excuse me, the lower right of your keyboard to the immediate left of the Shift key. And it'll also share a key with the question mark. And then if you want to raise something to a power, so x to the second power, y to the third power, x cubed, y squared, things like that. Those are going to be exponents. So the exponents is the term that we call them. And when we write them, we put an x, and then in the upper right corner, we call this superscript. We superscript that 2. However, in Excel, Excel doesn't recognize superscript as a part of a formula. You can use superscript to type, but you can't use it to use it in a formula. So what we need to do is we need to use that little caret key. So in this case, it's x up second. So it's telling us it's increased to the second power. And the little caret key is shift 6. That caret, and again we call that a caret, that caret shares the same key as the number 6 in the top row of your keyboard. When we need to use greater than or equal to, we will discuss them further. But then we also want to make sure we discuss our order of operations. So for most of us, we learned the order of operations somewhere around 4th grade. And in the United States, we learned the mnemonic, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally," or PEMDAS. And all that is, it's a quick way for us to remember PEMDAS. Please, parentheses, excuse, exponent, my, multiplication, dear, division, aunt, addition, Sally, subtraction. So it's just a way for us to remember how we solve a math problem. And again, that's telling us what our order of operations is. So if we have multiple operators within one problem, we need to solve that problem in a very specific way. So for example, we've got a problem right over here in cell F11. And so this problem reads 75 minus 5 squared plus the quantity 12 minus 10 divided by 5. So again, 75 minus 5 squared plus the quantity 12 minus 10 divided by 5. So we need to figure out how we solve this problem, because if we start at the left and move right, we are not going to get anything like the answer we think we're supposed to get. So the first thing that we need to do is anything in parentheses. So we notice we've got 12 minus 10 divided by 5 is in our parentheses. So we've got our parentheses. We can't do 12 minus 10, which is 2, and then divide it by 5, because in the order of operations, division, dear, comes before subtraction. So even though we're in a parentheses, we still have to follow our order. So the first thing we have to do is do this 10 divided by 5, which is 2. And then 12 minus 2 gives us 10. So 12 minus 2 divided by 5 will give us 10. So here we have that new problem, 75 minus 5 squared plus 10. Once we've got that, we have no more parentheses. Now we look for exponents. We have an exponent, 5 squared. So if we multiply 5 times itself, we're raising 5 to the second power. 5 times 5 is 25. Now we have our next step. So 75 minus 25 plus 10. And then once we get into a level where we have either multiplication division or addition and subtraction, we will do those in order from left to right. Again, multiplication and division they're called reciprocal properties. They're going to undo what the other one does. If we have 7 times 49, or 7 times 2 is 14. If we have 14 divided by 2, it's 7. So whatever multiplication does, division undoes, and vice versa. But we also have to do that same thing with addition and subtraction. They carry the same amount of weight. So if we have an addition problem and a subtraction problem in that same order, we need to do whichever one comes first. And so in this case, we have a 75 minus 25, which will give us 50. So now we have 50, and then finally we're going to add that 10, which will give us 60. So the answer to this question, 75 minus 5 squared plus the quantity 12 minus 10 divided by 5 is 60. And this is just a very quick primer on the operators and the order of operations. As we start to get into lessons 5, 6, and 7, we will start to use those orders of operations a little bit more when we're creating our different functions. We're using logical arguments. So for example, if arguments, so if one condition is met, then we have one response. If it's not met, we have a different response. So we will start using those order of operations in the upcoming lessons. We will not use it in this first lesson. In this first lesson, the only thing we are going to use is some basic text and cell formatting. And we're going to do that if we come back to that blank workbook. We'll start it in this blank workbook. Now, the project we're working on today is called a Downtime Report, where we're going to look at our downtime issues and then the reasons for those. So a couple of the things that you'll notice is we have our rows will represent different shifts, and they'll also represent different problems within a shift. So for example, the welder issue, the welder out of whip. We have CC clamp error, CC other, material error, a dry fit error. So there's lots of different errors or reasons that we can have to give us issues on our line. Now you'll notice that we have the first shift up here, we have the second shift with the same issues, and the third shift. And then within our shifts, we have our columns will represent days and weeks. So we have our days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It repeats, repeats, repeats. And then we also have those divided into weeks. So week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. And again, all of this it's going to be very straightforward. We're not going to enter any formulas. We're not going to enter any data points within this. We're just going to create this sheet that we can hang out on our line, and then we can enter the information daily with a pen or a pencil. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is, again, being familiar with this, we're going to navigate to our blank workbook. And the first thing we're going to do is I always like to start with a save as. Now, when we begin the worksheet, I like to save it as my first step because it will allow me to do quick saves along the way, as opposed to doing a bunch of work and then saving it as something. This way, we run the risk of our power going out or something and losing all of our information. Once we've got it saved, we can just keep clicking that autosave, bloop, 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 and it will continue to save that information. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my File tab, my Save option or Save As, and then I'm going to indicate where I want to save this. So in this case, I'm going to browse for a place to save it, and I'm going to go to my desktop, or if you have a flash drive, go to that flash drive. So on my desktop, I'm going to click. It's going to take me to the desktop. In the file name, I'm just going to change that to Downtime Report. We're going to save it as a type in Excel workbook and then save. And then you'll notice up at the top, we changed from Excel Sheet 1 to Downtime Report. Now, anytime we make a change, we can just come up here, click that little save button, and it will continually save as we click that. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to enter our title of this worksheet. So again, this is going to be called Downtime Issues, as you saw before. So we're going to type Downtime Issues and then enter. Now you'll notice that Downtime Issues, we typed it in cell A1, it ran across to cell B1. If we click in cell B1, we can see there's nothing typed in cell B1, even though it looks like the word issues is typed in B1. Do not be fooled. Don't type downtime in cell A1. and then tab over to type issues in B1. That is not how it's going to work. And then in cell A2, we're going to type the text downtime reasons. Downtime reasons. And then enter. All right, so we've got our title and then kind of a subtitle entered. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to enter the pound sign. So Shift 3 is going to give us the pound sign, because as you noticed before, we had 13 different reasons for potential downtime. Tab or arrow over to the next key. The tab key is adjacent to the Q on your keyboard. The arrow key is going to be in the lower right of your keyboard. And then we're going to type first as the ordinal. So 1ST, first, shift. And then immediately after that, in cell C3, we're going to type the word sun. And I'm going to make sure I type it correctly. Capital S-U-N, sun. Now, another thing with our cells is that within Excel, Excel is a very good identifier of patterns. So there's a lot of specific patterns that it will recognize. So for example, days of the week is one of them. I'm going to click on cell C3, so I have sun highlighted. And again, our active cell is C3. It shows us up here. We also have this bold kind of green outline around that cell. And then in the bottom right of that cell, we have, it kind of looks like a little square, like a little small box. This is called your fill handle. So with that fill handle, it's going to allow us to do some really interesting things and really cool things. But we want to make sure we have our fill handle. So this little thing that I have spinning around my sheet right now, this is our selection pointer. So our selection pointer, when it's this big white plus sign, this is going to indicate where we will do our work. So if I come over, bring this big white selection pointer to cell A7, click, L7 is now my active cell. This is where I'm going to work. So that big white plus sign is going to be, it's going to select a specific cell for us to be working in, and that's all it does. If I hover over that green perimeter and get that four-way pointing arrow, again, I'm just going to hold it there so you can see what it does. Now this is going to function very similar as a cut and paste would. So if I click my left mouse button, as I have that little four-way pointing arrow, and I drag over, and this time we'll say to L7, and release, now it takes it from cell C3 and it moves it to cell L7. So again, it functions as a cut and then a paste somewhere else. I don't want either of those, the big plus sign or the four-way pointing arrow. I want to hover over that lower right of cell C3, hover right over that little green box, and then get that little, the thin black plus sign, or a crosshair, I will typically call it. When I click and hold with my left mouse button and drag across to column I and release, you'll notice that it will automatically populate the days of the week in that same format. So if I did Sunday, if I type the text Sunday and then filled it across, it's going to type the full day of the week, as opposed to just typing the abbreviation. It will also do that with months. If I type the word January and fill across, it will give me the full names of the month. If I type Jan, J-A-N, pull it across, it will give me just that 3-digit or the 3-character abbreviation. All right, so now I've got that, my days of the week taken care of. I'm also going to come to cell C2 immediately above Sun, and I'm going to type week 1, and then enter. All right, so we've got most of this sheet kind of ready to work with. I'm going to come to cell A4, and then in cell A4, I'm going to start identifying the different reasons for our downtime. So in cell A4, I'm going to type B4. I'm going to type welder hyphen space machine, and then enter. And then in cell B5, I'm going to enter welder hyphen out of whip, and then enter. And then I'm going to continue with those remaining reasons. All right, after I've entered those other reasons, again, those are in the worksheet that you have handed out, I'm also going to use a number in column A to identify that reason. So in column A4, I'm going to enter the number 1, and then enter, and then in A5, I'm going to enter the number 2, and enter. So like I said before, Excel will recognize patterns very easily. However, if the pattern is unclear, it doesn't know what you want. So if I just put a 1, for example, and I wanted to fill 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I could pull down, and since I only have a 1 entered, it can't recognize it. It thinks it just wants to copy it over and over and over again. So I need to first indicate what my step is. And so the step is just indicating what my next value is. So if I did 1, 3, 5, it would recognize I want odd numbers. If I do 1, 2, it recognizes I want to go up 1 number at a time. So I can select 1 and 2, so click in cell A4, drag through cell A5, then get that little down pointing, or get that crosshair, pull down to cell 16, A16, release, and then now it's going to number that range. And again, so we've got 12 reasons and then a blank line for any unforeseen reason that might come about. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to center this week 1 text above this entire range, because all of these days are part of this week. So what I'm going to do is select cell C2. So make that my active cell, click and hold with my mouse button, drag across through cell I2, and then in my Home tab Alignment Group, select the option that says Merge and Center. And that's going to pull that text all the way across. All right, so once I've done that, now prepare to have your mind blown. I'm going to select cell C3, where we have the word sun. I'm going to click and hold with my left mouse button, drag across and up. So I have the range C2 through I3 selected. So C2 through I3, the week 1, and then Sunday through Saturday. Once I have that selected, I'm going to come over here, grab that fill handle in the bottom right of that range, and I'm going to pull this, click and hold, pull it across until we get to AD3. I'm going to release, and then you'll see Shazam! I'll zoom out just a little bit. You can see simultaneously as we did that, it recognized the pattern. So it went days of the week, Monday, Sunday through Saturday, Sunday through Saturday, Sunday through Saturday. And then it also recognized that we were indicating that each one of those groupings represented a week. So it also merged and centered and renamed our week 2, 3, and 4. So this is really an amazing thing that the software will do for us. All right, so I'm going to come back. All right, so now the next thing we're going to do is we are going to do some of this formatting. So now as we looked at before, the weekends, we are not running these shifts, so we don't have to have space for the weekend, so we're going to shade them out. We're also going to shade out our days of the week. And to do this, we can do one at a time, or we can use what's called a non-adjacent selection. So for example, if I wanted to select E4 through E15, so E4 through E15, and then I wanted to select all the way through to next Tuesday, which is K4 through K15, I can click and hold, drag over and down, and release, and it selects that entire range for me. Now, if I only wanted to select the Tuesday, so if I only wanted to select the Tuesdays, I can select E4 through E15, let go of my mouse button, then hold Control and select E4, click and hold, drag through E15, and release my mouse button and my Control key. And then I've got that one column selected and then another column 7 away from it. And again, that's called non-adjacent. So adjacent is going to be cells that are right next to each other. Non-adjacent is going to be cells that are not next to each other. They're quite a distance away from one another. And so what I want to do is I'm going to format with shading all of the cells that I don't need in this little worksheet to be active. So I'm going to first select cell C4, and again, don't worry that it says machine in there, because if I click up here, it doesn't say it. I'm going to click and hold in cell C4, drag down through C16. Let go of my mouse button. I'm going to come over to cell I4. Now before I select anything, I'm going to hold Control, click in I4, drag down and over to include J16. Then release my mouse button. And again, now I have I4 through J16, that's Saturday and Sunday, selected. And then again, I'm going to hold Control, click in P4, drag through Q16, and I've got that next range selected. And again, here I let my finger off my Control key for a moment, just so I can navigate to see the other cells that I want to work with. Because if I hold my Control key and then zoom across, it's going to zoom in and out, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to navigate over. Now I'm going to hold my Control key to where I can see the rest of it. Hold Control, click in W4 through X16, and then AD4 through AD16. I'm going to come up to my Home tab font group where we've got that little paint can that's spilling. That's our fill color. I'm going to click that little fill color arrow, and I'm going to choose the option light gray background 2, darker 10%. So it's going to be the third column, second row, and that's going to apply that shading. Now once I have that shading, I also want to include that days of the week. So I'm going to click 83, drag and hold through C3, and then I'm just going to come up and click that little paint can button again to fill that color. So now I've got that fill done. I'm also going to fill our shift and reason. So I'm going to click and hold B3, drag to A3, hold Control, A4 through A16, my fill color. I'm going to apply the black text 1 color to change that color. With it still selected, I'm going to change my font color because with a black font I can't see it. I'm going to change my font color to white background 1 and bold formatting. All right. Then I'm going to apply a border to all of my cells. So I'm going to select A2. I don't want to include downtime issues. A2 through AD16. And then in my Home tab, Font Group, I'm going to click my bottom border, that little arrow, and choose All Borders. And that will apply a border around everything. Right, now I need to adjust the spacing of this because we can see the width of these cells makes this huge. We don't need it that big because we don't need these cells to be as wide as they are. Whoopsie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, come over here, get a down pointing arrow above the column heading for A. I'm going to click once with my left mouse button. It's going to select that cell, or select that column, excuse me. Then Control, hover over cell C, click and hold with my left mouse button, drag across through column AD, and then release my Control key and my mouse button. I've got that range selected. In my Home tab, Cell Group, I'm going to choose Format. And then in my cell size area, Column Width, and I'm going to change that from 8.9. I'm just going to type 4 right in that box, and then OK. And it's going to change the width of that to 4 instead of 8. So it cut that size in half. Then I'm going to select column B heading, right above that, down pointing arrow above B, click and hold, and in the same area, my Home tab, Cell Group, I'm going to click Format arrow, and then Auto Fit Column Width. And that's going to auto fit that, so it's right about 17.55. You can make it 18 if you want, but 17.55 is about where it is. All right, I'm going to select C3 through AD3 and center this text within that column. So my Home tab, Alignment Group, I'm going to select Center. It's going to center that text. I'm also going to give it a bold to apply bold formatting. And then in row 2, week 1 through 4, I'm going to apply bold formatting to that as well. Now I want to differentiate every week with a little bit thicker of a border. So I'm going to select cell C2 through I16. In my Home tab Font Group, I'm going to click that little border arrow, and I'm going to choose Thick Outside Border. And that's going to give it a thicker border around that. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to J2 through P2. Again, now I don't have to look at my option. I'm just going to click because it's going to give me that same function I did before. And then Q2 through W16, click that border button, don't have to change it. And then X2 through AD16, click that border. And then if you want to go ahead and do it to A2 through B16, you can do that one as well. All right. I'm also going to select A4 through A16. I want to center those numbers within that cell. So with those selected, Home tab, Alignment Group, Center. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and do my quick save again. All right, so now with all of those things selected, I basically have my sheet done. The only things I have left to do are copy that and paste it through the range. So I'm going to select A3. So I want to copy row 3 through 16. So I'm going to select A3 through AD16. I'm going to copy. And then I'm going to select A17 through AD44. Let me get back to it. AD44. And then paste. And then you'll notice what it did is it pasted 2 copies of that below. So now I have first shift with all this information, and then first shift, first shift. I want to change these other shifts to second, third. I'm going to select B17 and then highlight the text first shift. Just change that to second. And then in row 31, I'm going to change that first to third. So now we have our first shift, second shift, and third shift. Do a little quick save again. And then you'll notice before we had our, if we take a look again, we've got our first shift is black, second shift is blue, third shift is red. So we're going to come over and we're going to apply those colors. So second shift was blue, so I'm going to select A17 and B17. I'm going to give that the standard blue fill. And then A18 through A30, click that standard blue fill. And then the same thing, A31 and B31. This time I'm going to give it a standard red fill. And A32 through A44, the standard red fill. All right. And the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to use what's called a center across selection. So where we merged and centered before, this time we're going to apply a select cell A1. We're going to apply a cell style. So cell styles, our home tab style group. We're going to apply a title style to that. We're going to give it a bold format. And then instead of merging and centering it across that range A1 through AD1, we're going to select A1 through AD1. And then this time, we're going to go to our alignment launcher. And then in our text alignment, where it says horizontal, we're going to click that arrow and say center across selection and OK. And then it's going to center that text across that range. But where we have week 1, if we click in week 1, we're only in cell C2. If we click in week 2, we're only in cell J2. But if we click anywhere in row 1, you can see we've selected different cells. So it looks like we've merged and centered, but we've actually centered it across that entire selection, which gives us a little more freedom. All right. So now we have that project complete. Again, so we've got our shifts differentiated by changing the color. We've got our weeks differentiated by applying a bold formatting around them. We've got our days applied or differentiated by using full outlines in all cells. And then we've also differentiated our weeks by eliminating the weekends. Again, so there was a lot of really simple steps in here. Now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to come to this down in this bottom where it says Sheet 1. We're going to double click Sheet 1. And then instead of leaving it Sheet 1, we're going to type Downtime Issues and then enter. So we've changed the Sheets tab from the name Sheet 1 to Downtime Issues, and then right click on that Downtime Issues tab color, and I'm going to change it to the standard blue coloring. All right, and so that project is finished. You can go ahead and do a little quick save again, and we're done. So thank you for watching with me, and thank you for taking this lesson seriously.